America's luxury brand market has just imploded. Not in a single crash, not with a bang, but with a slow, quiet collapse no one wanted to admit was happening. Behind the polished storefronts and glowing brand campaigns, the cracks are spreading. The very names that once defined prestige are quietly losing their power. Luxury items once worth thousands are being dumped for pennies online. Once exclusive boutiques are begging for foot traffic. And the same logos people once bragged about, they're now collecting dust in resale bins. From Prada's fading silence to Louis Vuitton's loudest fall yet, 9 luxury giants are standing on the edge, and some won't make it past 2026. This isn't just a market dip, it's a collapse of confidence, the moment the illusion finally breaks. Let's start with number 9, and trust me, you'll want to stick around for number 1, because that one nobody saw coming. Number 9, Ferragamo. Ferragamo was once the gold standard of quiet elegance, the brand that didn't need flash or fame to prove its worth. It was the whisper in a world of noise. But in 2025, that whisper has turned into silence, and silence doesn't sell. Walk into a Ferragamo boutique in Manhattan, and you'll notice something odd. The products are beautiful. Buttery leather, tailored jackets, shoes that look like sculpture. Everything is perfect, maybe too perfect. There's no edge. No urgency, no spark of desire that makes people pull out their wallets. It's like visiting an art gallery where everything is for sale, but no one's buying. The numbers paint the same story. In early 2025, Ferragamo's revenue dipped nearly 8%, and the CEO stepped down amid growing investor pressure. Their bold rebrand under Maximilian Davis brought fresh energy to the runway, but it never quite reached the US customer because, here's the thing, luxury today isn't about heritage. It's about hunger. And Ferragamo, for all its poise, looks like it lost its appetite. Quiet luxury is still trending, sure, but the rules have changed. The Row and Loro Piana made minimalism magnetic. They built mystique. Ferragamo assumed it already had that mystique, but in reality, it got comfortable. In a world addicted to storytelling, they stayed silent, assuming their name still meant something. It doesn't. Not to Gen Z, not to the new wealth class that measures prestige by relevance, not legacy. Meanwhile, the American market has grown impatient. People want brands that move them, something to flex subtly, not something that feels like it belongs in their parents' closet. And that's Ferragamo's biggest problem. It's timeless, but time moved on. Unless Ferragamo finds a way to tell a new story, one that feels alive, not archived, it risks becoming exactly what it fears most, irrelevant. By 2026, its US footprint could shrink, its boutiques reduced to museum pieces for those who still remember when Ferragamo meant power. Because in luxury, you can survive without noise, but you can't survive without heartbeat. And as Ferragamo fades quietly into the background, the next brand on this list is collapsing for the opposite reason. Too much noise, not enough soul. Number 8, Kate Spade. Kate Spade used to sparkle. It was the brand that made luxury feel like a celebration, colorful, approachable, and unapologetically optimistic. Owning a Kate Spade bag wasn't about status, it was about personality. It said you were fun, confident, and a little bit different. But in 2025, that glitter is starting to fade. Walk into a Kate Spade store today, and it feels like walking into a time capsule from 2013. The same bright florals, playful shapes, and cheerful slogans greet you at the door, but the customer has changed. The woman who once adored those designs has evolved. She wants sophistication, not sweetness. She's swapping pastel bows for polished minimalism, and she's doing it fast. Financially, things don't look much better. The brand's parent company, Tapestry, admitted that sales have slumped for consecutive quarters. Executives call it a strategic reset. But analysts know what that means. A company scrambling to stay relevant. Even their high-profile collaborations, like the 2025 Target collection, sparked buzz but hurt prestige. It reminded people that Kate Spade, the brand that once stood proudly among designer names, was now sharing shelf space with budget labels. The problem isn't just design, it's direction. Luxury in 2025 is all about depth. Consumers want storytelling, craftsmanship, identity. Kate Spade is still trying to make people smile when buyers are looking for something to believe in. If the brand wants to survive 2026, it needs a rebirth, a pivot from cute to confident. Imagine a Kate Spade that grows up without losing her charm, a version that embraces structure, elegance, and legacy instead of nostalgia. Because right now the market isn't cruel, it's indifferent, and indifference is fatal in fashion. As Kate Spade fades into uncertainty, another American icon faces a different kind of downfall. One that came not from being forgotten, but from being everywhere. Number 7. Michael Kors. There was a time when Michael Kors was the face of American luxury. The brand had cracked the code: take European polish, mix it with New York attitude, and sell it at a price that didn't feel impossible. For years it worked. Those gold MK logos weren't just decoration, they were declaration. You'd made it. At least that's what the world believed. But like all icons that become too familiar, Kors went from exclusive to excessive. The brand scaled too fast, opening outlets across America, chasing every customer instead of the right ones. What started as aspirational became ordinary. When your handbag hangs on every shoulder in every mall, it stops feeling like success and starts feeling like sameness. By 2025, the consequences had caught up. Capri Holdings, Kors' parent company, saw sales decline across the US, with full-price stores struggling, while outlet sales quietly ballooned. On paper, it looked fine. In reality, it was a brand slowly trading reputation for revenue. You can survive on discounts, but you can't build desire that way. The irony is that Kors helped create the modern, accessible luxury category, and now it's being devoured by it. Coach refined its image. Tory Burch went upscale. Even newcomers like Pauline are eating into the market that Kors once owned. The American shopper has matured. They don't want a flashy logo anymore. They want integrity, craftsmanship, subtlety. Kors, stuck in the shadow of its own overexposure, isn't giving them that. And the truth is brutal. You can't rebuild exclusivity once you've sold it off at 60% off. To survive past 2026, Kors needs a reinvention, not a rebrand. Fewer stores, higher quality, a complete break from the outlet identity. Maybe a return to true American glamour. Sleek, minimal, confident, not covered in gold hardware. Because if it doesn't change soon, Michael Kors will become exactly what it tried to save people from: disposable fashion, with a luxury price tag. And while Kors fights to climb out of the discount trap, another heritage label is falling into a different kind of hole, one paved with tradition, pride, and a checkered pattern that's lost its shine. Number 6. Burberry. There was a time when owning a Burberry trench wasn't just about fashion, it was about status. The crisp lines, the weight of the fabric, the iconic check peeking just enough from the inside. It all said something quiet but powerful. I've made it, and I don't need to prove it. For decades, that subtle prestige was Burberry's magic. But now, that magic has dulled. In 2025, Burberry finds itself caught in a strange kind of limbo. Not forgotten, but no longer desired. Its problem isn't that it fell off, it's that it stayed the same while everyone else evolved. The brand still leans on its heritage, the British weather, the stiff collars, the trench that's been romanticized for a century. But today's luxury isn't about preservation, it's about reinvention. And Burberry, for all its grace, is moving too slowly for a world that changes by the scroll. Their recent creative overhaul under Daniel Lee was supposed to mark a new era. The collections look stronger, richer colors, bolder textures, a return to craftsmanship. Critics love it. But here's the catch. Critics don't buy handbags. Consumers do. And in the American market, Burberry's message is getting lost. In Los Angeles and New York, where image is currency, Burberry feels polite when people want passion. Even the resale numbers reflect it. A trench that once resold for over $1,500 now barely breaks $600. The check pattern that used to signify wealth is now shorthand for overexposure. When a symbol becomes too common, it stops meaning anything at all. What's worse is the emotional disconnect. Burberry built its reputation on timelessness, but timelessness without relevance becomes nostalgia, and nostalgia doesn't pay the bills. The brand's ads talk about heritage, but the buyers they're targeting don't dream of the past. They're chasing what feels new. If Burberry wants to survive 2026, it needs more than another logo refresh or runway show. It needs a story that feels alive again, one that reconnects with what the trench originally stood for: rebellion, disguised as refinement. Because the truth is, Burberry doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just needs to say something worth listening to again. And while Burberry's drowning in silence, the next brand on our list is collapsing under the noise, a name that once defined glamour, but now can't afford its own sparkle. Number 5. Jimmy Choo. There was a time when Jimmy Choo wasn't just a shoe brand. It was a symbol. It stood for glamour, ambition, and the promise that one perfect pair of heels could change your entire mood, your entire night, maybe even your entire life. Those shoes weren't meant to blend in. They were meant to be seen, photographed, envied. Every stride was a headline. But in 2025, that fantasy feels like an old movie, beautiful, but from another time. The red carpet moments that made Jimmy Choo famous have lost their cultural power. Social media has replaced celebrity fashion with relatable chic. People don't dream about crystal-embellished stilettos anymore. They dream about quiet luxury loafers and minimalist sneakers. The modern status symbol isn't a heel that hurts. It's comfort that looks expensive. Financially, Jimmy Choo is in survival mode. Capri Holdings, its parent company, has reported declining U.S. sales for 2 consecutive years. The pandemic hangover didn't help, but the real issue is identity. The brand has tried to adapt, introducing sneakers, flats, and more casual lines. But here's the catch. When a house built on fantasy starts selling practicality, it loses its heartbeat. The truth is, the Choo woman grew up. The 20-somethings who idolized Carrie Bradshaw in the 2000s are now executives, mothers, or entrepreneurs. They still appreciate beauty, but they want it with purpose. And Jimmy Choo, trapped in its red carpet era, hasn't given them a reason to fall in love again. Even the resale market has turned cold, once legendary heels that retailed for $1,200 now struggle to fetch $300 online. That's not depreciation, that's detachment. If the brand wants to survive 2026, it needs to rediscover its essence, not by chasing trends, but by reclaiming what made it special in the first place. Luxury isn't about comfort, it's about emotion. A Jimmy Choo shoe should still make your pulse race, even if you only wear it twice a year. Because glamour never truly dies. It just waits for someone brave enough to bring it back. And as Jimmy Choo's sparkle flickers, our countdown takes us deeper into the chaos. Next up is a brand that was supposed to redefine American luxury, but might not even make it past the next fiscal year. Number 4. Versace. If Jimmy Choo's downfall is the death of glamour, then Versace's is the exhaustion of excess. For decades, the brand thrived on audacity, gold chains, Medusa heads, plunging necklines, and unapologetic sex appeal. Versace didn't whisper, it roared. It was the brand of power fantasies, of Miami mansions and late-night champagne. But in 2025, the world isn't in the mood for noise. Luxury has gone quiet. Wealth has gone discreet. The people who once flaunted Versace logos are now hiding them behind plain cashmere sweaters from the row. The pandemic rewired what status means. People no longer want to look rich, they want to look smart. And Versace, for all its glitz, still hasn't figured out what intelligence looks like in design form. Capri Holdings, which owns both Versace and Jimmy Choo, reported a sharp slowdown in the US this year. The New York flagship still dazzles, but it's the wrong kind of dazzle. Beautiful, but tired. The resale market tells the same story. Those ornate bags that once defined 2000s glamour now struggle to fetch half their retail price online. Even the Medusa emblem, once a flex, feels almost ironic now. To make matters worse, the brand's pop culture dominance, the Kardashians, the rappers, the influencers, has started to backfire. When your aesthetic becomes memeable, your prestige becomes negotiable. And Versace, once the definition of luxury rebellion, now looks like it's still chasing relevance in a game it created. The sad truth? The US buyer has grown out of Versace. The brand's flamboyance feels nostalgic, not aspirational. To survive 2026, it needs to evolve without losing its soul, tone down the noise, but keep the heat. Because somewhere underneath the gold and glitter, there's still a story worth saving, one of risk, legacy, and unapologetic confidence. But unless Versace learns to speak the new language of luxury, restraint, it'll keep shouting into a room that's already gone quiet. And as the Medusa fades into myth, another American icon is quietly slipping from its pedestal, not because it changed too much, but because it didn't change fast enough. Number 3, Coach. If you told someone 10 years ago that Coach would one day be in trouble again, they'd have laughed. Coach was the comeback story of the 2010s, a fallen icon reborn. They fixed the overexposure, cleaned up the outlets, hired Stuart Vevers, and suddenly, the brand was cool again. TikTok teens called it retro chic. Millennials rediscovered their love for it, and sales soared. It was the blueprint of how to save an American luxury brand. But here's the twist. Coach's resurrection may have peaked too soon, because now, in 2025, the same strategies that saved it might be the ones dragging it back down. Let's start with the market shift. Post-pandemic consumers have become sharper, less sentimental. They don't buy into revival stories anymore. They want evolution. And while Coach's quality is still there, its novelty isn't. Walk into any mall in America, and Coach has become what it was trying to escape. Predictable. The pillow tabby, the rogue, the same monogram patterns repackaged every few months. Even the influencers who once hyped it have moved on to quieter names like Polen, Kuyana, or Kaita. Tapestry's own numbers tell a worrying story. The company's US sales growth flattened this year, despite global expansion. And while analysts blame inflation, the truth is simpler. Coach has hit saturation again. It's too available to feel exclusive, too commercial to feel aspirational. The resale market backs it up. The same bags that dominated Instagram 2 years ago are now selling at 40% of their original price on sites like Rebag and The Real Real. The brand's marketing, once fresh and nostalgic, now feels overly polished. Consumers see through it. The empowerment campaigns, the pseudo-documentary ads about individuality. It's not that people dislike Coach, it's that they've stopped believing it's special. The bigger threat, though, comes from within. Tapestry's acquisition of Capri Holdings, the parent company of Michael Kors and Versace, might look like growth, but it's actually consolidation under pressure. When 3 mid-tier luxury brands cling together for survival, it's a sign the market's getting tighter, not stronger. And Coach, as the oldest name of the 3, is the most at risk of fading first. If Coach wants to survive 2026, it has to reinvent itself again. But that's harder the second time. Reinventions lose power when they feel rehearsed. The next move can't just be another pillow tabby or nostalgia trip. It has to redefine what American luxury means. Maybe smaller production, made-to-order collections, even collaborations that feel artistic instead of algorithmic. Because right now, Coach isn't collapsing from failure, it's collapsing from fatigue. And in a market that worships novelty, being tired is fatal. As Coach's shine dims once more, we turn to a brand that's been through reinventions of its own, but this one's battle is much bigger. Its problem isn't fatigue, it's ego. Number 2. Prada, US market. If Coach is fading from fatigue, Prada's downfall feels like a warning shot to the entire industry, proof that even legends can stumble when they lose touch with the world outside their boutiques. For decades, Prada was untouchable. It wasn't just fashion, it was philosophy. Minimalism with intellect, the thinking person's luxury. Its nylon bags and clean lines built an empire that seemed immune to market trends. But in 2025, America's relationship with Prada is unraveling. Not because it lost its edge, but because it lost its relevance. The brand's recent collections under Miuccia Prada and Raf Simons have dazzled critics, but alienated customers. The artistic direction is daring, conceptual, often strange, and while that keeps Prada in the pages of Vogue, it's driving away everyday buyers. Luxury buyers in the US aren't looking for abstraction. They're looking for identity, something they can wear, not just admire. And Prada's problem is that it's speaking to museums when it should be speaking to people. Sales data backs it up. According to 2025 financial reports, US retail has slowed by nearly 12%, while Asia continues to grow. The American luxury market is now dominated by new-class minimalists, brands like Totem, The Row, and even Celine that are doing Prada's old job better than Prada itself. Those brands took Prada's DNA and turned it into lifestyle. Prada, meanwhile, stayed cerebral. The resale market tells the same story. Nylon reeditions that once sold out in hours are now heavily discounted on secondhand sites. Demand for the iconic Galleria bag has dropped sharply since 2023. And even among collectors, the chatter has changed. Prada's no longer must-have, it's wait until it's on sale. The brand's biggest enemy, though, might be its own identity crisis. It's torn between two souls: the commercial powerhouse that sells perfume and logo tees, and the intellectual designer label that wants to challenge art itself. Somewhere between those two extremes, the American consumer got lost. And that's the tragedy. Prada still makes some of the best products in the world. Structured, timeless, bold, but they're speaking to an audience that doesn't exist anymore. The new American luxury buyer doesn't want to be told what's avant-garde. They want to feel seen. If Prada doesn't bridge that gap soon, it risks becoming what it once mocked: a legacy brand, selling nostalgia to people who remember when it mattered. And as Prada's intellect turns into isolation, we arrive at the final chapter, the biggest name of them all, a brand that defined global luxury, but now stands on the edge of its own empire. Number 1, Louis Vuitton. For over a century, Louis Vuitton has been more than a brand. It's been a symbol of luxury itself. Those initials, LV, have represented power, taste, and wealth in every language. From Fifth Avenue to Paris's Champs-Élysées, Vuitton wasn't just selling handbags, it was selling aspiration. Owning one wasn't about fashion, it was about status. But in 2025, that status is cracking, quietly, subtly, fatally. Louis Vuitton's biggest problem is that it has become too big to feel special. When every celebrity, influencer, and college student owns a monogram, the thrill of owning one disappears. Scarcity used to be Vuitton's greatest weapon. Now the brand is everywhere, on billboards, in airports, at outlets, on TikTok thrift hauls. The same pattern that once symbolized elite exclusivity has become the wallpaper of consumer culture. Inside the US, the problem runs deeper. Reports show that resale values for Louis Vuitton bags have plummeted since early 2024, with some pieces losing up to 40% of their value on second-hand sites. Even the once coveted Neverfull tote, the starter bag for millions of first-time luxury buyers, is oversaturated. It's no longer a trophy, it's an entry-level cliché. Then there's brand fatigue. The collaborations, the constant drops, the endless stream of limited editions, it's too much. Vuitton's magic used to come from mystique, but now it's running on marketing fumes. In just the last 24 months, we've seen partnerships with artists, musicians, streetwear designers, and even game franchises. Each collab was meant to keep Vuitton relevant, but all it's done is blur its identity. The brand that once defined timelessness is now chasing trends like a teenager. And while the creative direction under Pharrell Williams has injected new energy, it's also deepened the divide. His collections are vibrant, optimistic, and steeped in hip-hop culture, a brilliant fit for a global audience hungry for cultural crossover. But in America, especially among older luxury buyers, that shift feels alien. The new Vuitton is louder, flashier, and unapologetically showy. The kind of showmanship that sells headlines, not heirlooms. Even the craftsmanship, once Vuitton's unshakable anchor, has come under scrutiny. Social media has exploded with comparisons showing declining leather quality, thinner materials, uneven stitching, the kind of details luxury buyers never used to question. When your bags cost 5 figures, those details matter. And when your loyal customers start doubting them, the damage is hard to reverse. The truth is, Louis Vuitton isn't dying. It's inflating. It's everywhere, in every mall, on every influencer feed, in every resale store. And when luxury becomes omnipresent, it stops being luxury. By 2026, the brand won't vanish, but its aura might. Vuitton's survival depends on doing something it hasn't done in decades: pulling back, producing less, saying less, letting silence speak again. Because the future of luxury isn't about who can shout the loudest. It's about who dares to whisper. And right now, even Louis Vuitton, the giant of giants, has forgotten how. Luxury doesn't die with a crash, it fades with a sigh. Louis Vuitton's empire, once the heartbeat of global status, now feels like the closing act of a long performance. The lights are still bright, but the applause has softened, because that's what happens when every brand becomes everywhere. When prestige becomes promotion and craftsmanship becomes content. What was once rare now scrolls past us every day, Diluted, discounted, duplicated. But maybe that's not the end. Maybe it's the reset luxury's been avoiding. The start of something quieter, more deliberate, where we value why things are made, not just who made them. The collapse of these giants isn't tragedy, it's transformation. The industry isn't dying, it's evolving, shedding the glitter to find its soul again. If you made it this far, you already know, this isn't just about handbags or headlines. It's about a culture that finally started asking better questions. So keep asking, keep watching, because the next era of luxury won't be built by the loudest brands. It'll be built by the ones that remember what silence sounds like. If you found this breakdown insightful, hit that like button. Not for the algorithm, but because you're part of the rare few who still believe luxury should mean something. Subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the shine. And let's keep uncovering what's real in a world built on illusion.